Hello, this is Shambhavi. Welcome to Satsang. Satsang is an ancient spiritual practice from India. It means being in reality together. I give Satsang live every Wednesday and Sunday night in Portland, Maine. This Dharma talk was recorded during one of our Wednesday night gatherings. Please visit jayakula.org to learn more about the teachings. You can find video satsangs on Jayakula's YouTube channel, and my books are all available on Amazon.com. Much love to you, wherever and however you are. So once again today, somebody wrote to me and asked me about the value of drugs and spiritual practice. This happens periodically. And, the justification for this engaging in this sort of pseudo-argument about drugs is that, well, I had some experience and I learned a lot, or I had an insight because of some drug-taking escapade. And no one can deny that. Of course, taking substances and altering your normal way of approaching things can cause you to have some insight that you wouldn't have had otherwise. However, waking up is not an experience. The state of being awake is not a series of special experiences. It's not a never-ending series of insights or something that you're going to hold on to or cultivate. That approach to spirituality, that we're looking to have some particular kind of experience or be validated by some particular insight that we've had, is only at one level of spiritual practice. And it's not unimportant, but unfortunately, when we hear about people having some kind of realization, or we read a lot of books about spiritual practice, oftentimes they're just like a hop and a skip and a hop and a skip from one extraordinary spiritual experience to another. That's actually what the book is about, or the story is about, this never-ending series of extraordinary experiences. And then we get this idea that that's the point of doing spiritual practice. And then furthermore, we get even the more erroneous idea that this kind of excitation is desirable, this kind of spiritual over-excitation, and then we cultivate that. The awake state isn't an experience, it's that from which all experiences arise. And the hallmark of awakening is not that we feel all experiences are special, or we're having these extraordinary experiences that we can then share with people. It's that we realize that all experiences have equality. The hunt for special experiences and spiritual validation, which characterizes a lot of our sadhana for who knows how many lifetimes, ends or begins to wind down the more we actually wake up. Then there's just being natural, being relaxed. And that's kind of like a continual primordial nourishment, not some continuing search for some extraordinary excitation, spiritual excitation. Ma said when she was young and she was displaying all these wonderful marks of someone who was extraordinarily realized, and she was doing things like levitating and being in two places at once and swirling around on the floor in some unimaginable way and having mantras pour out of her mouth and go, healing people in special ways. She said, if you people think I'm going to continue showing myself like this, if you people think I'm going to be this way my whole life, you're in for a disappointment. Even she only was displaying those things at a certain time for a certain purpose. She also said, one of my favorite moments, which is in Mother Reveals Herself, the book where she's talking and the private conversations between herself and Baiji, one of her principal disciples. He asks her about these extraordinary states that she had gone into when she was younger. Can you talk to me more about that extraordinary Leela, that extraordinary play of sadhana? And she said, why is it that you don't ask me about walking and sitting and laughing and cooking? Those are just as extraordinary as anything else. Most of the time, we want to have those spiritual experiences for one of two reasons or both reasons. Because we want to be validated spiritually. We want to feel spiritually important or successful. We want to feel spiritually successful, right? And then the other reason is we want to be saved. And we think that it's going to come in this big, flashy package. Those things are both symptoms of limited self. Both of those desires, to be saved and to be validated. It's not that extraordinary things don't happen. It's not that insights don't happen. It's not that wonders don't happen. But if you hold on to them, if you want validation and you want to be saved, and then you hold on to those things, then you get stuck. You get stopped wherever that happened. And from just being around the spiritual block for a while, most of you, that there's many people out there who have some one experience that they feel validated them, and then they hung out their shingle and start teaching. And then they're just stuck there, whatever that was. Lord Shiva is producing infinite experiences, an unimaginable, innumerable number of experiences. And when you are more awake, you're just being identified with that from which that arises, and then you're just like in a river of experiences that to catch on to one or another of them doesn't even make any sense. And this is when the desire to, push and try to get these so-called spiritual experiences really begins to diminish. The experience with drugs can, at some very, very beginning level of a person waking up, do something positive now and then, for sure. People can realize things or particularly see things about themselves that they weren't seeing before. But you can't sustain that. It isn't a practice of waking up, it's just a practice of a sudden insight. A practice of waking up is a practice that involves you wake up in the morning and you're working and trying to be in that condition, and you're going to work and you're eating lunch and you're coming home and you're having friends and you're going around, and every single moment is filled with the movement toward identifying with God consciousness in a very seamless, smooth way that does not involve the search for these spectacular insights or one-off kinds of experiences. Drugs do not have that characteristic of a Khanda sadhana. They have a characteristic of some very narrow range of experience. And they can never be the vehicle for waking up. Not for real. They can only be a vehicle occasionally for having some kind of insight. One-off type of a thing. When you're way more awake than I am, and you take drugs, they have no effect on you. They're just a blip somewhere in this vast landscape of other blips. I actually don't know what would happen if I took drugs. I haven't taken drugs since I was in my 20s, so I really have no idea what would happen. I do know what happens when I have a pain, and if I can kind of flip a switch, and instead of the pain being a focus, the pain can just be something in a landscape, right? Still there, but not taking up my whole consciousness. And I imagine that's something like what happens when people take drugs, and they can do that same thing with them, not be so affected by them, right? But in any case, waking up is not about searching for one wondrous experience after another. It's simply about relaxing and being immersed in this primordial livingness, minute by minute, day by day, without any fear, without any striving, without any manipulation, without any artifice, without anything to defend or protect or agenda. It's being in this responsive condition, and you're just enjoying that, and there really isn't anything more to it. Although it's the most marvelous thing, but it isn't an experience, right? In the same way that drugs are. So I think the message for us, because I don't think any of you are really all that involved in drugs as far as I know, is that the search for spiritual experiences can, in some particular instances, drive people in their sadhana for some period of time. But if you keep it up, that kind of effort, that kind of drive for spiritual accomplishment, which is not surrender, it can cause you to practice very, very hard. I know this from personal experience. And it can bring about certain kinds of experiences. But in the end, if you remain attached to repeating those kinds of experiences and being validated over and over again and having ever more accomplishment in your practice, you will be extremely frustrated, and it will be a complete dead end if you remain attached to that. So it can only take you so far, but eventually you have to surrender that and just be with nature, be with God, and whatever happens, happens. You just, need to acclimatize yourself to that. So I have seen, in my own life and in other people's lives, this searching for experiences, searching for spiritual validation, accomplishment, spiritual importance. That can, again, it can cause some accomplishment to happen, but if it is not abandoned, then you can spend a whole lifetime just continually searching for that same experience to happen over and over and be revalidated over and over, just like you do in your ordinary life. Most of you are, searching for validation a lot of the time in various different ways that you do. And then you just port that over into your spiritual life. It seems different, but it's not. It's just a horizontal move. It's not a vertical move. So eventually, you have to just let things happen in their own way and not try to manipulate even your spiritual life. And just as I always like to say, just do your practice. Just put one foot in front of the other. Try not to have too many expectations. Everything will be given to you if you empty yourself of those expectations. If you empty yourself of those goals, of those spiritual goals of spiritual accomplishment. If you don't end up in a situation where those things are stripped from you or you relinquish them on your own, you really can get into trouble. Because you can get so frustrated that then you start manufacturing all kinds of things, fantasies about yourself. And this is where we get a lot of the fake teachers or the people that try to manipulate other people and lie about their experiences and things like that. That can happen if you get too frustrated You just can't deal with it. Understand that if you have that kind of energy going, of searching for particular experiences, that it might help you a little bit in the beginning, but you have to surrender that. One time I went out to dinner when I was living in Manhattan with a friend who always had these just horrible boyfriends. I don't know where she found them, but anyway, we went to this Italian restaurant, and this guy that she was dating, he was just like a thug. And it was really late at night, and he kept demanding an omelet, and the waiter said, "This is an Italian restaurant. We don't have omelets." And this guy was getting more and more angry because he wanted an omelet. Meanwhile, there was this whole menu of other things. Right? If we don't give up insisting on what we want, then we never see what's actually there. Jayakula is a nonprofit community offering opportunities to learn and practice in the direct realization traditions of Trika Shaivism and Dzogchen. We are based in Portland, Maine and Portland, Oregon. Visit jayakula.org to explore more of our offerings.